Hello and welcome to another edition of In Studio on the GNet TV News Project. I'm Andrew McKeever, the news director here at GNet TV. It's my pleasure to be with you today, and also my pleasure to have with us here in the studio the town manager of Manchester, Mr. John O'Keefe.
Thank you, Andrew.
John, welcome to GNet.
Thanks.
Welcome back, I should say. So town meeting is right around the corner, coming up in I guess a couple of weeks. In Manchester, of course, it sort of breaks down into three separate parts, I guess you could say. The town floor meeting on Saturday, March 4th. It starts at 1 o'clock at MEMS, and then we have the school district floor meeting. That'll be the following Monday, March 6th, starting at 7 p.m., also back at MEMS. And then the Australian ballot voting will take place on Tuesday, March 7th, the official town meeting day. And polls will be open at the town hall from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., I believe.
Yep, and 7 a.m. is a change based on the Act 46. All the towns had to agree on a common schedule, so we've typically been 8 o'clock.
I wondered about that. I thought that was an extension of what I remember seeing in the past. But all right, for all those early risers out there, you can get ahead and beat the lines, I guess, right?
Exactly.
Well, John, we wanted to take some time and go through the town report, the town budget, and talk about some of the articles that voters will be talking about at the floor meeting and then voting the following Tuesday. I guess just to get us started, I know a question that's come up in the past has been when we get to the actual town budget, which always seems to kind of get glossed over fairly quickly. I know some people felt that, here we're spending, that's where the big money really is, and take a relatively small slice of time and then spend a lot of time talking about much smaller special articles. But there's two budgets, and I think you guys did this way last year, but there was a change. You divided the operating budget, which is about $4.6 million this year, and separated that from the capital budget, $869,000, I believe. Just real quick, what's the difference between the two for those who aren't accounting oriented?
So I guess it does a couple things, we think. The presentation is usually done by Ivan, is always done by Ivan B., the chair of the select board, and he's tried to double down on the presentation to make sure there's a full discussion on it. The operating budget's a little tougher to understand because, it deals with personnel, it deals with benefits, snow and ice numbers, commodities, for example. Why is the price of salt going up a certain amount, or diesel? And there's complicated formulas that we bake into those as far as looking at energy futures and other things like that. So the operating budget is a little trickier, and if you cut things there, the ramifications could be difficult to perceive. On the capital side, it's more of a list of things we're going to do and the estimated costs. And for example, this spring we're putting a new roof on Town Hall. I think most people can understand pretty easily the new roof because most people have probably put on a new roof if they're older than 30 years old.
At some point or another, time comes up for that.
It does. Or buying a cruiser. There's not a lot of difference between a cruiser and the car that you and I drive around. A little different engine, a little different suspension and transmission. So we separated out so we could have some more logical discussions about first the operating budget and then the capital budget. On the capital side, it's pretty much just a list of projects and here's what it costs. And I think they're actually in the town report on page 8. Now there's a list of some of them. For example,
down at the bottom there.
Yep. $14,000 for new lights at the town hall parking lot. The ones there are starting to fail. $13,000 for a new boiler at the public safety building. I mean, a lot of those things are pretty typical. Most people don't replace a 4300 International with a 7500 International or similar pickup dump truck. That's $205,000.
Right.
So that's probably almost a lifetime of car replacements for most people. So that's the reason that we separate out the two.
Okay. Well, so walk us through some of the highlights then of the budget on that page 8 there of Part A of the town report. You have, you have mentioned a few of these here. What are some of the big ticket things that are going on in the budget, either expense increases or changes that are kind of a big change from like last year?
So last year we added a new police officer, which was a big deal. Town meeting specifically voted $75,000 to add a new police officer. Right. We don't have any new personnel this year. Typically, we don't add new personnel. So not a lot going on in personnel. Probably the most interesting thing in personnel is we have a new line item in here that's designed to be an incentive for the fire department. So their highest responders would get a stipend to buy additional equipment for themselves, whether it's new boots or new gloves. Unfortunately, that's probably the most interesting thing on the personnel side. We're not talking about a lot of money. I think that's $2,000.
Okay.
But that was part of the plan that we did last year. We did increase the fire department stipend by $7,000 for the amount of money that's paid out to the members for responding to fires. And we did that even knowing that most, if not all, of the firefighters have told us repeatedly that they don't do it for the money. They do it as service to the community. But it's still nice to get paid something, and also to see a fairly large increase from $23,000 to $30,000.
Okay.
So that's an extension onto that. On the budget side, there's some other interesting articles that we can talk about afterwards.
Sure.
But on the budget side, spending does go up and for a couple of reasons. Property taxes are set to go up about 2.3%,
Okay.
which is right around what inflation is currently. But the spending goes up because there's a couple pieces in there. One is a large grant from the state, hopefully, that will get to pave Richville Road.
Right.
So that puts a lot of money on the spending side. There's also related revenue that offsets that. And the other piece is a new funding agreement with the rescue squad that's still tentative, but we're working on it, which would mean that the town would pay the rescue squad a subsidy with all the other towns based on a formula. And there's two pieces of it. One's the capital side and one's the operating side. On the operating side, it would be based on usage, which Manchester's a very high user of the Manchester Rescue Squad. On the other side, the capital side, it's based on per capita. Because regardless of whether you use the service or not, we still have to have ambulances to respond to
Right.
calls.
Right.
So that was done on a per capita basis. On the other side of the equation, though, and that's about $125,000 is what we estimate our subsidy would be to the rescue squad. But on the other side, we're putting the cost of dispatch and the rent of the building onto the rescue squad. And that equates to about $100,000. So in the net of it all, Manchester would be spending about $25,000. Currently, we're not spending anything, although we did spend money buying the new ambulance a couple of years ago.
Looking over at the revenue side of things, just for a quick second, just jump over there. As you noted, the tax increase, I guess, this year goes, assuming that no additional articles or what it goes from roughly almost 24 cents up to about 24.5 cents, roughly speaking, per $100 of assessed property value. So therefore, the median house in Manchester is interesting, valued at almost $272,000, $271,900 to be precise. So that would be a tax impact of $665, roughly, going from $650 to $665.
Yep. About $15.
I've often wondered, a big part of that is local option tax, right? I mean, that's, and I see you're projecting a slight increase in that. I often wondered, how do you plan for that? Is it kind of like a guesstimate, or do you look at what was the last couple of years and kind of take an average of that, or because there's really no way to really be sure, I would think, unlike property taxes.
Yeah, property taxes. I mean, that's always the saving grace at the local level, is that the tax that's provided to municipalities, at least in the Northeast and in most areas, is property tax, which is a stable tax. It doesn't go up and down with economic trends. On the local option tax, Manchester is very unique compared to most communities in the Northeast or in America, where we have an income stream that's related to economic activity. So it does make it hard to calculate that. In the past, we've had some pretty good luck. What we look at is past trends, but we also look to, given the fact that our budget office is maybe about a half a person between me and Ruth, and department heads work very carefully on it too, but we don't have 30 people in a room crunching numbers.
Right.
So we do go outside our house to look at these certain things. So on the energy side, for example, we use information from the Energy Information Administration, the EIA, which is a federal government agency.
Okay.
People kind of laugh when I say that I use federal numbers, but it's the best I got. So, and those are pretty current and pretty accurate, I think, as far as projecting out the cost of gasoline and diesel and heating fuel long term. On the economic side, the state budget office actually comes out with an economic forecast report a couple times a year where they're tracking revenues, including sales tax and meals and rooms tax, because they also collect it. So we take those numbers and then apply them locally, what we know. Are there more restaurants and hotels opening up, for example? What's been the current trends? Sometimes we break the trend at the state level. Most recently, we've seen pretty flat sales tax numbers, which is the larger piece of the puzzle that we get. On the other hand, we've seen an explosion in meals, rooms, and alcohol tax,
Interesting.
which suggests to us that we're seeing an increase in visitors, but they're spending less in stores.
Yeah.
And some of that, I think, is the trend that you see nationally with Amazon and other online
Right,
providers.
online commerce, yeah.
So there are kind of some interesting numbers, but we've had some pretty good luck forecasting that. And what we try to not do is just apply 2 or 3% to every number each year.
Right.
We try to apply zero-based budgeting, which is as much as we can with the large budget office that we have. We look at each number, whether it's cell phones or photocopiers, heating fuel, diesel, equipment maintenance. Sometimes that you're going to have a large piece of maintenance. Like a couple of years ago, we had new tires for the grader, and they're extremely expensive. We're talking very large,
Big tires.
big tires. And I think it was $5,000 or $6,000. So we knew that cost was coming up.
Yeah.
So we're able to budget that.
Wow. And just on a related note, we could also point, you also mentioned that the budget doesn't include any funding for tourism marketing. I know in the past, hasn't there been an initiative to put in $15,000 or $25,000 or set aside roughly $15,000 to $25,000 in town money that would be matched by local private money?
Yep.
But that's coming to an end at this point?
We're at least hitting pause on that. We didn't get any requests to put it in there this year. We've got about $20,000 left in a special fund that we've dedicated that was fundraised separately. So about $20,000 there. In the current fiscal year, we have $25,000 in the mix, but it requires a $25,000 match. So
Okay.
the new Manchester Business Association is working on that initiative and trying to raise that money, because that would be good money to leverage. But right now, there could be as much as almost, there could be $70,000
left over from previous years.
left over from previous years.
Okay.
But it's uncertain what we'll do down the line. I think there's a lot of balls in the air with the chamber going out of
Right.
operation, and now this Manchester Business Association. I think the select board's trying to figure out what the
Wait and see how, till the dust settles or whatever.
yes, yeah.
Okay. Well, let's go down through some of these articles then, and some of the special appropriations folks will be asked to. I guess these would be floor votes on Saturday, I guess, right? Let's start with Article 7, where you're asking for $160,000 from the Capital Improvement Reserve and Contingency Fund. And let me just stop right there. The CIRC Fund. What is the CIRC Fund?
So the CIRC Fund is it's an account. Years ago, it was part of a settlement with the Equinox Hotel.
Okay, this goes back to the UDAG fund.
To the UDAG fund, yep.
Okay.
And the UDAG fund was, that's a federal program that doesn't exist anymore. And the term UDAG, especially when we were dealing with outside agencies, really caused a lot of confusion about what the UDAG fund was. So the select board at town meeting actually voted to change the title of the account to this Capital Improvement Reserve and Contingency Fund, which is really more accurate as far as what we're using it for. UDAG was Urban Development Action Grant. I'm not sure what the action was or the development was or what the urban part of it was. I'm not sure.
It was
Manchester's
sort of
urban.
a revolving fund where
It was,
you
yeah.
could extract money from that, and whoever got the money would pay it back at some point.
Part of the settlement was that the Equinox, when they sold a portion of it to Guinness, Guinness required them to settle up all of their past liabilities, and this was one of them. So we got a certain sum of money. I'm not quite sure what it was, but it was well over $1 million, plus the airport land, the land that's behind the
Oh, right.
airport industrial park,
Okay.
about 60 acres there.
Right.
And so that was settlement of the debt that Equinox had to the town.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I think it was kind of like college loans back in the day, that you took them out, but no one was really quite sure they were going to repay them. But anyways, we did get repayment for this, which was very unusual, and we've used it for a lot of interesting projects over the years, including
Right.
the ones that we're
And
proposing here.
We have a couple here. So just to get back to my original question then, $160,000 for the purchase of some property, I guess between the rec park and the Catholic church there on Bonnet Street. What's the background to that one?
So, I think one of the select board members probably said it best, that you only get one chance to buy your neighbor's property. So this is kind of a unique opportunity. It really wasn't, expansion of the park may have been on the radar screen at one point or another. This is about between 7 and 8 acres to the property that would be to the west of the rec park. It's property that most people in town, some people think the town owns it, some people think that other adjacent landowners own it. It's owned by the Catholic Church, Christ Our Savior Parish, who's interested in selling it. As you know, publicly it was one of the sites that was being proposed by the library.
Yeah, several years ago, yeah.
Several years ago. There are some access issues down onto the property. From our property, it's accessible, but from the highway, it's
Right.
tough to
Yeah,
access.
It's kind of below the street level.
It is. There's a pretty steep drop off there. So we have a couple concerns now that we won't be able to sell till spring. So what we're looking for is authorization, not permission to buy the land, but just authorization to use the CERC fund
Okay.
to buy it. The two big questions for the select board and for town management and for our engineers. The first one is, as you remember, there was some contamination on the site.
Right.
We've reviewed the environmental documents that suggest that it's been largely mitigated or it's below surface. And the other issue is part of the property is wet. So what we need to do is, first off, we've already contracted with an environmental engineering firm through our consultant engineer to go in and do some test pits and actually do on-site testing of the property before we buy it. Because as you know, once you buy it, you own it. So we need to do some real due diligence there, maybe even more than due diligence.
Okay.
And then the second issue is, we'd like to use the property for recreational purposes, and that's one of the easements that we're providing for the church, is that we would only use it for recreational purposes. It could be a building, could be anything down the line.
Okay.
We have some very tentative plans for the property, but nothing short term. But the second one is, we need to delineate exactly where the wetland is. Because if the wetland extends too far north, the property isn't that useful to us.
Okay.
So we have to send in an expert to delineate the wetlands for us.
All right, and then right after that, we have another article asking, shall the town authorize $35,000 from the CERC fund for the purpose of providing the town share of a state grant related to improvements on Depot Street. So that's part of the long-running project on that. We'll have the bike lanes and the other improvements to that corridor.
The project overall is moving ahead really quickly, actually. Sort of the opposite of the roundabout project, I think, where we talked about it for 20 years.
Which went on forever.
I guess we're making up for lost time on the roundabout project. It's a much less complicated project. We recently met with the state of Vermont AOT and actually got some good news. The good news is that some of the money that we were planning to spend in here and on the original project will actually be on the state side of the ledger. This grant, the grant that we got from the state, requires a 10% match. So 90% state and federal money, 10% local money, and that was authorized by town meeting 2 years ago or last year. I can't remember which one. I guess it was last year. It was last year, $60,000. One of the things that we decided was that the town, through our construction contractor, will go in and do the realignments to the road, new curbing and things like that. After that, the state will come through and mill and pave. We were assuming that the milling would be done as part of the town project, but everyone is under the understanding that actually doing the improvements first with patches and then coming through and milling everything would actually be more effective.
Okay.
The other thing that, so this money would be for two things. The first one is to redo the signal lights at Richville, Center Hill, and Depot Street. And the second one is standalone street lighting, kind of similar to what you have in front of the town green or around the roundabout or on historic Main Street. The other further good news is that the state, when they do the milling, is planning to mill through these things under the road called loops, that when you drive over them, it indicates to the signals that a car is there and that the cycle should change.
Oh, okay.
We're planning to replace those with these things that look like cameras. They're really not, by the way, the things that you see on the top of the signal lights.
Right, when you go through toll booths and stuff like that?
Yeah, they're actually sensors.
Right.
So they're not actually taking a picture of your car in most cases, and in this case. So when the state comes through and mills that, they will actually be the ones that will pay to switch over the technology.
Okay.
It's much more stable technology compared to the loop system.
Now, is that project supposed to get underway this coming year, or is that 2018?
2018. And that was the other discussion that we had with the state, was the timing of the state paving project. Sometimes in government, very seldom, the stars all align. This is one of those where, our project on Depot Street really times out well with the state paving project, which means a huge savings to the taxpayers.
So they were planning on paving Depot Street anyway in 2018 or
Yep.
thereabouts? Okay.
So we've moved the project around a little bit just to coincide with that.
Right.
But what we're expecting is the curbing work and everything like that, and crosswalks and changes to the sidewalk will happen in the spring and early summer of 2018, and the paving will happen early fall.
Okay. So we're still in the sort of the design work phase this year, and nothing really will change.
For anyone who wants to see the plans up front in actual scale, human scale, where you can actually see what's going on, the full plans as they exist now are on the bulletin board at Kilburn Room at Town Hall.
Okay.
So you can actually go in, and it's pretty user friendly.
Maybe just to kind of segue into that, let's jump over to Article 14, because I think there's kind of a tie-in there. That's the one, and this would be one that folks will vote on by Australian ballot as opposed to
That's right.
off the floor. Important to note. This is where you're looking for, I guess, approval to take out a $3 million bond to do some sewer and water line work. And I believe there's a connection with that to the Depot Street thing, because there's paving and whatnot involved in that as well.
Yep. And there is a summary of this too. That's on page, a little description of this.
Yeah, I saw it in there somewhere.
Page 14. Well, that's actually kind of funny. Article 14 is on page 14. I can't tell you that was part of the plan.
Didn't plan ahead that close.
No, our publishing skills are not that sophisticated. So
So
this is
a summary here of the project.
And it kind of lays out a little bit in terms that even I can understand what the project is. And so there's two parts to it. One is the larger part is replacing the antiquated, over 100-year-old water main between Seminary Ave, which is the road that goes up to BBA on Main Street, all the way down to Prospect Street. So that's well over a mile of water main, which is quite a bit. That would be one of our largest projects ever. And that would do a couple things. One, it would increase water pressure and service to the homes in that zone. But the other piece is we actually can turn the the fire hydrants back on that had recently been tagged, because the antiquated line that goes through there is either 6 or 4 inches. And in order to have hydrants attached to them, the state requires 8 inches. So that's a big piece of it. That's a line that's been on our radar screen for a while. The reason it was accelerated was the state came in and told us that they're going to pave that
Right.
roadway, which is a huge savings to the water company, not to have to do a full overlay on the roadway. That means that would happen in 2018, and then the state would come by in the spring and do the full overlay.
So the town would tear up the strip of roadway that is over the water line.
Yep,
Patch that up,
patch that up.
and then the state's going to come on after that and then do a complete resurfacing of the entire two
Entire
lanes of the
roadway,
road.
yep.
Okay.
One reason we do it like that, by the way, even if we did the water project in 18 and we were going to pave it, we wouldn't pave it till 19, because you want to have the trench settle over the winter. So we'll have a patch on there. It'll settle. The state will come through and mill it again, take off the top 2 inches, and then do an overlay on top of that.
So just to be clear, what voters will be voting on then on Tuesday, March 7th on Article 14 is just to give you the approval to go out and take out the bond. And
Take out the bond. That's required by state law. There's certain things that can be voted on the floor, or have to be voted on the floor, and there's certain ones that have to be by Australian ballot. This is one that has to be by Australian ballot. A lot of times the select board will get comments from residents saying, well, this should be voted on by Australian ballot. And it's not that, we don't make up what goes on Australian ballot and what goes on the floor. The other piece of the project, though, is connecting service lines in the area of the Manchester Inn, or the Inn at Manchester and Orvis and that area through Main Street, and then Main Street north of Barnumville up towards Town Hall. We'll be changing over 49 services from low pressure, smaller height water mains to the larger 8 or 10 inch water main that's high pressure. And what that'll do is for a fairly cheap amount of money. $250,000 is not cheap, but it is when you're talking about water main replacement. It'll allow us to shut off about 5,900 feet of old water main, which is causing leaks and other issues. This is possible because we have two parallel water lines, the old 4-inch low pressure and the higher pressure 8 or 10-inch that's newer. This will mean a lot of lateral cuts across the road. So again, the same strategy. Town will do the work in 18. Actually, no, the town will do the work this year in 17, and then the state will hopefully pave in 18 after the trenches settle.
All right.
So another one where we were able to save a lot of money because of the timing of the state project.
Well, that all sounds good. I'm sure the taxpayers will appreciate that. Well, I guess we're just about out of time here today, but folks can, if they haven't already gotten their town report, they can pick one up, I guess, at town hall or around town, or read it online, right?
It is online.
Can go to the town's website and plow through all. Let's see, how many pages do we have here? 70 something. And then there's also Part B. Part B contains what exactly?
This is report of officers. So you have like the rec department report, the select board report,
all right.
List of town officers. School report is in here. There's some important information here. It's tough to separate out the two. The reason we did this a couple of years ago is the cost of the town report was really going up. So we tried to decide what was the most important. But obviously, it's all important because we spent the time to write it and print it.
Right.
Some of the other things in here that are also online, pieces from the town audit. The audit and Part B is on the town report as well. This one you can pick up at the library, Kilburns, Discount Beverage, trying to remember where else. Town Hall, of course. Yeah, that's a complete list. Or they can call or email my office. There's instructions in Part A, and we'll actually mail it to you as well.
All right.
There are some people in town that didn't get this because state law requires us to mail it to all postal patrons, which doesn't mean you get everybody in town.
Right.
In the past, we had done it to all registered voters, and that's not legal. It also meant that a lot of taxpayers weren't getting it because they weren't registered voters, but it also indicates to them, even though they don't vote in town, it shows them how we're spending their money that they pay anyways.
Right.
So there's no perfect system. And there's also, I've never seen a town report that doesn't have mistakes in it. It's just the nature of the business.
Right.
So I guarantee you there will be some mistakes in this. I haven't seen any huge ones yet. If there are big ones, we usually correct them at town meeting.
All right. And once again, floor meeting starts on at 1 o'clock, March 4th, Saturday, March 4th at MEMS. The school district meeting then Monday, March 6th at 7 p.m. at MEMS, and then Australian ballot voting from 7 to 7 on Tuesday, March 7th. Well, John, thank you very much for coming in and walking us through all of this, and appreciate you taking the time to do that. And thank you all for watching as well, and we'll see you at town meeting. Have a great day.